let's Mangia with Michele today on What Lights Us Up. I know we're so excited to hear all about Italian-American culture today. So welcome to What Lights Us Up.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to connect today. I know that we have a mutual connection that put us in touch.
Yes.
And I think it was like that really, I took the chance to, when we were texting back and forth, you know when someone introduces someone and you're bombarded with connections, you're
Yes.
like, okay, how do I connect with this person? And I think you were going to buy a Mac, and I was like, oh my God, and I didn't even do it on purpose. Oh my gosh, I remember going through that too.
Yeah.
And the
certain level of anxiety.
Like the pain points of technology. And I think that really created an immediate connection
right.
for
sure.
us, that we feel like we know each other.
Yes.
So I came over to Michelle's and we're gonna cook together. So
Yeah.
I'll put the recipe, or it's lobster sauce, so I'll share the video and post that. But I feel like we have so much in common. We're both Italian American.
Yes. Both East Coasters.
Both East Coasters. We both learned to cook from our upbringing.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
And we both started in the corporate world before
Yes.
finding our way into the kitchen.
Yes. Yes. We do have a lot in common.
So tell us, and for all of your followers out there who know who you are and follow Mangia with Michele, what inspired your passion into the kitchen?
You know, so yes, I had an Italian-American upbringing. My grandparents, all four of them, came from Italy, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she cooked a lot. And I was by her side when I was 5 years old. Like, I always loved to eat, so I think that's why I always just wanted to be in the kitchen with her and cook. So it was just a natural connection that I had to the food. I learned with eggs, I started with, and then one thing led to another, and I always loved to cook. In fact, when I was little, if somebody asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say a chef. But it's funny because that totally went away over the years, because I also was very into academics and never even considered cooking as a career. You know, I was just more like, gotta do something more professional, you know, and didn't really even consider it as a career until I was in a career that I wasn't that passionate about. But for sure, it was my upbringing. It was cooking with mom and grandmom and Aunt Mary, and making pastas and gnocchi and sauces and baking. I'm not much of a baker, but I did get that a bit from my mom.
My grandmother was a big baker too. She loved baking. She was the inspiration behind my cookbook. It was like the joy that she found cooking, and really it inspired us to come together as a family. I think cooking inspires Italians to sit around the table. It's our culture, it's our community.
Food brings people together.
Yes.
You know, my mom was a big giving food away, and it's crazy how much food I give away right now in my life. And there's really nothing that makes me happier. People are like, why do you give another away? I love giving food away. I love making stuff to give food away. I think there's, you know, it's a certain kind of person that brings me joy.
Yes. So you were very into academics, like we're all taught the conditions, right? Go to college.
Yes.
We were just talking about, I went to Syracuse, you went to Georgetown,
Yes.
and we're taught all the things, pursue a corporate career, do all the things. So you actually had a career in finance.
Accounting. I was an accounting major, and then I went to work for one of the big 6 public accounting firms. So I was an auditor. I didn't go you either go like the tax route or the audit route. I went the audit route and got the big job in Manhattan after college, and became a CPA when I was 24. And yeah, I mean, it was something like everyone was very proud of me, and I was proud of myself too. But I realized pretty quickly, I'd say a good year and a half into it, I'm like, I don't think I'm really into what I'm doing here. You know, I would get the Wall Street Journal because I thought I should get the Wall Street Journal. Did I ever read it? No. You know, what was I reading? I was reading my food magazines. When people were coming to visit me in Manhattan, I was taking them to the specialty Italian food stores. I'm like, oh my God, you got to see this. You know, we weren't going to the museums. We were going to look at the prepared foods. We were going to look at chicken parmesan. So, you know, at some point, I'm like, okay, something else needs to happen here.
And so what was that? What helped you make that pivot at that point? Because you're in the city, you're making money, you're probably like living this, you know, this comfortable life.
Sure. Well, actually, I remember maybe it was like 2.5 years into, I went and took a tour of what was called the French Culinary Institute at the time. They've changed the name, but which was a cooking school in Manhattan. And I didn't tell anyone I was doing it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. But like, I was just so not ready. I mean, I had student loans. I was not prepared to go back and tell my Italian American parents, like, I think I want to go to cooking school, or I don't think I really want to do what I'm doing anymore. So I just wasn't ready. And then at some point, shortly thereafter, I realized I was working for an international company. And my roommate at the time, who's still one of my best friends, had just moved to Mexico City for an international assignment. So I'm like, maybe I should try something like that. So I made this decision, like, I'm going to try and get one of these 2-year exchanges in Milan. I was studying Italian recreationally at the time. I didn't grow up speaking Italian, but I studied at Georgetown, and I was studying it on the weekends for fun in New York. And I thought, Italy, Milan's the business center of Europe, so why not Milan? So I went in one day, that Monday, and I went to my HR person, and I said, I want to try and do an international exchange. And they're like, okay, let me just put your name on our list. And I'm like, no, don't just put my name on a list. Like, I had a feeling that was not going to get me the job. So I just lobbied. I went to all the partners I worked for and all my managers. And long story short, they came back to me a couple months later and said, well, we don't have anything for you in Italy, but we have a position for someone your level in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'm like, oh, what language do they speak there? You know, it was French, which I didn't know a word of French. But I was like, okay, I was 25 years old and I wanted the experience of going abroad, and I didn't really have to work in French. I mean, I worked completely in English, so that was never an issue. But so I was like, I will work in this field 2 more years to have this experience. And it was really that experience that was so life-defining for me on so many levels, from understanding what real food culture is and what food can really mean to people. And it also gave me such opportunity to travel all around all of Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. I even went to Russia at a very young age. And it was also the experience that gave me the courage that when I was ready to move back to the US, to quit my job, move back in with my parents, and enroll in cooking school. So that's sort of how that happened.
So you were on a sabbatical for your accounting job, or?
No, it was not a sabbatical. I mean, it was a 2-year international exchange.
Oh, okay.
It was an exchange. I was working for the same company in Geneva, and it was expected that I come back after 2 years and work for the New York office.
Okay.
Which I had every intention of doing at some point, but then I realized, no, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to. I will come back to the U.S. and then I'm going to cooking school. And my parents were very supportive. I mean, it was weird. I didn't really get any pushback at that point. I think because they knew I was like very unhappy in what I was doing, and I think food was also something that they could relate to in a way. And I knew that I wasn't like restaurant bound. Like, working in restaurants was never my intention or journey. And in fact, the idea of working the line in a restaurant would give me agita just thinking about it. But I thought, like, loosely, like, I want to combine my business background with food. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it. I loved the idea of prepared foods. So I thought, like, kind of, maybe I'll go to cooking school and then I will eventually open up my own Italian specialty food store. I didn't do that, but that was what my thought process was.
It's hard to tell your Italian American family that. I think maybe it's the culture of how much they spent coming from Italy and building a life. And it was like, I remember my family saying, like, you speak English. My grandfather went to college. It was a big thing, a big accomplishment. And so for us to go to college, and I know there's a lot of first or second generations that are for the first time going to college for their family. Yeah. And then to say, okay, I got this corporate job and now I'm going to leave that job.
Right. And my parents were very, very proud of what I was doing, and that I was a CPA, and they would tell all of their friends about it. So it was a little like that. I had that sort of hanging over my head, like, ugh.
But you made the jump.
But I made the jump, yeah, and I never looked back. And I loved cooking school. I was 27 years old, never worked in a professional kitchen, only cooked recreationally and at home. And I was in classes with 18-year-olds, a lot of 18-year-old boys who had been working in kitchens since they were like 14 or 15. So they knew a lot of, they knew so much more than I did. I was very green. I had the passion, but I didn't have the skills. So I learned a lot in cooking school, and I embraced it. I mean, if after cooking school was done, I was like, I would totally do it all over again. I would be at school at like 5 in the morning when we were doing culinary competitions. I would leave 11 at night. I worked so much. I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
So it was like, for you, not feeling like you're doing work. Like, it was like you lost yourself, and that's how you knew it lit you up.
Absolutely. It absolutely lit me up. I don't think I even realized it, but it was just, I had so much energy. I would literally jump out of bed because I was like excited to go to school every day.
Well, that's how you know you have a passion in something. And I was like that when I created my cookbook. It was like something that I was doing on the side of my full-time job, and it lit me up. Right. And I was so engrossed in this project. That's all I wanted to do was learn.
And it's so much work to put a cookbook together that's a lot of hours that you had for your personal time. Just now you're doing this.
Right. You have a cookbook too. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And for me, it's like, okay, well, what was that about that project that brought me passion and brought me joy? I didn't have any experience in the writing and the recipe development. They were family recipes,
right?
But I didn't have any of that experience. For me, it was cooking. For me, is really a joy. It's a way for me to show love. It's presence. And so for you, you have your cookbook. What does cooking mean to you? Why do you cook?
Gosh, cooking it takes me away from a lot of the other things that are on my mind. I guess the normal stresses and other things of life. It brings me joy because I create something that I can share with other people. So I guess it's a way that I show love as well. I feel like it brings people together, so it makes people happy, and I'm a connector. I'm a natural connector. I love connecting people. I love having people over. I love entertaining and having dinner parties, and it's a facilitator, and let's face it, it's one of life's best pleasures is eating something delicious and working with great ingredients.
What do you think, we were talking about before we hit record about dinner parties and connecting people around the table? It's something that I love doing too, not only curating like an experience, but some of my friends say they have the most joy coming over and having a meal and having an experience around food. It's like some people have never had a 4-course Italian homemade meal. Like they've never had that. They've never sat around the table for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Some cultures don't do that. What do you think, in such a divisive world, how do you think, I mean, you went to Europe.
Yep.
You immersed yourself in another culture. It's a new trend now. We're all wanting a different experience than what we're used to. Maybe it's we want to learn something different. Maybe we want to experience a different way of life. But and cooking and hosting and sitting around a table does slow our life down a little bit. For a moment, we sit around the table and we have conversation and we enjoy food that's been prepared with love. How do you think I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what we can learn from each other by sharing a meal and by sharing and traveling to someone's culture, home, table.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think food is the gateway to any culture. So number one, if it's a group of people that are not of the same background, like not your Italian American cousins and whatnot, but your friends that are maybe your urban family or whatever, they'll learn about they can learn about your culture and vice versa through food for sure. It's a conversation piece, and somehow people always end up in the kitchen. So people just love to talk about food because it's not divisive. It's the exact opposite of divisive. It brings people together, and anybody can talk about pizza. Anybody can talk about a good sauce, and people you'd be surprised at how many people want to know, like, well, exactly how did you make this, or how many people. Also people like to learn. Like every now and again, I'll throw around the word umami, for example, or something like that. People like to learn these terms, like these technical terms and these kitchen terms, but it's just, I think it's just about breaking bread. I think it comes down to breaking bread. People love to be together. It's reminiscent of family, and it's so much more intimate than going to a restaurant. But of course, I also love going to restaurants.
You build a friendship. Today, it was funny, and I'll link the episode. We're making lobster sauce.
Yes.
And I was expecting Michele to be a total expert, and I say this on the video too, of making lobster. And
it's an embarrassment.
No, but it's relatable because I've never cooked live lobster and it's intimidating.
Yes, it is.
But you were like, okay, we're gonna do this together, and I drove with the live lobsters and okay, in a closed, cooler, and we made lobster and it wasn't that bad.
No, we just we had to get over the trauma of like touching the live lobster because I had a very traumatic experience in early cooking school days where I had to deal with a lot of live lobsters. But yes.
again, it's like less divisive, right?
No, it's less divisive. It's something fun you can share. It's a funny moment,
It's something that we also grew up doing with our family.
Yes.
It made it less intimidating to make it with our grandmother.
It's nostalgic. Food is nostalgic. Food memories are very, very powerful, and I think that's also why food is so wonderful. When you smell something, like you smelled the lobster sauce earlier, and you said, oh my God, that is exactly, it's almost at the point, it's not ready yet, but it's almost like grandma's sauce. Now, those smells do not go with, smells are, I feel like, one of the most amazing, like, memory producers. And it's so wonderful. And it's related to food. It's because of food and the memories and the cooking and the moments. And what do you remember? You remember the dish, but you also remember your grandmother. You remember your family. You probably have a vision of like sitting around the table, what it was like as a little girl,
right,
eating that sauce.
And they say you awaken your senses.
Yes.
And it brings you to a place of joy. It brings you to a place of presence. And from there you can create, inspire.
Sure.
It's the same thing as someone reading a recipe. So when you created your cookbook, but you had your brand before you created your cookbook, right?
Yeah, I mean, the cookbook came kind of way into my food career. I spent a whole career in food service, most of it in retail food. And then I transitioned to independent culinary consulting. And I was doing that once lockdown hit in 2020. And I actually went into lockdown not having any clients. I had just landed a big client, which was supposed to start the week we closed, everything locked down. And because that happened, they just never did the project. So I literally went into that time with no income and no one's gonna hire a recipe developer in March of 2020. So not immediately, but I kind of gradually thought like, well, maybe it's a good time to work on my work. As a culinary professional, you always want to write a cookbook. Like I always wanted to write a cookbook, but I let life and work get in the way. I didn't know how to start. I was always busy working. So it was an opportunity for me to kind of brainstorm, and it's not an Italian-American cookbook though. It's not, I didn't end up doing an Italian cookbook, although my Italian-American roots absolutely come through. I did a very like apropos cookbook for that time, which was comfort food. It's soups inspired by your favorite dishes.
Oh.
It's called Soupified, and so it's soup versions of non-soup dishes. Chicken cacciatore soup, eggplant parm soup, Chinese egg roll soup, sausage and pepper soup, shrimp scampi soup. So these are hearty meals in one. These aren't the chicken pastinas of the world. They're not the, consommes where you have a meal afterwards. This is your meal. And it was so fun coming up with the ideas. I mean, you got to understand, as a chef and as a culinary director for many, many years, my job was to be innovative at work. And we used to laugh about it at work, like that innovation was like a 4-letter word. It was literally shoved down our throat. Be innovative, be innovative. So for years, I was always trying to think of how to come up with how to do recipes in a different way that are like a little bit more interesting. And that's kind of how this cookbook came about, because I was looking at dishes in a different way. And it was so fun. At first I thought, oh, I'll do like a dozen recipes. I'll do like a little ebook. And the brainstorming for a dozen recipes came up with 112 recipes, I think 33 of them made it into the book. But it was so fun. But, I did the entire thing out of my apartment in Manhattan with nothing professional except my professional experience. I did all the photos with my phone. I self-published.
Yeah, so did I.
By November of 2020, I released my cookbook, and it was so awesome. I'm so happy I did it. Definitely very proud of it. And I absolutely want to do more cookbooks. I just have to find the time to make that happen.
Do you feel the cookbook sort of paved a path, or it was a step on your path towards, you have a very large following on Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew a lot of my following prior, or like it was starting to grow a lot before that cookbook came along. The cookbook, and then once I kind of transitioned to working full-time on my website, Mangia with Michele, the cookbook is absolutely like a calling card. Like, I feel like for people that do what I do, it really is sort of makes you legit. More legit than the fact that I actually worked as a chef, for almost 20 years, because that's different. That's sort of like more different kind of professional experience. I mean, that's obviously gives me street cred as well. But a cookbook is something tangible that you can actually show.
And it's something that someone can relate to you and connect with you on.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's nothing like having someone send you a message that, oh my goodness, I just made your X, Y, and Z soup and my family loved it. It's going to be on rotation from now on. My kids loved it. I mean, that is what drives me. You know, what brings me joy are the people out there that are making my recipes. You know, if I can't actually have them over for dinner in my house, I feel like I'm connecting to people out there through my recipes. It's my legacy.
It's what lights you up.
It's what lights me up.
And we were
Exactly.
talking also earlier about, so you have this following on Instagram, but you also built a blog
Yes, my
on
website.
your website, which people, honestly, I think it's what a lot of people want to know, how to do that, or they aspire to do that. What do you attribute most to your success between your blog and Instagram, and potentially share some tips? But is it the energy you put out? Do you think it's the connections you made? Do you feel like it was just working from a greater passion outside of yourself? What do you think helped you?
I definitely think the passion and the energy, for sure. And when I first started out, which was only on Instagram and building a platform there, and Facebook, it was all about the recipes. I hadn't had a website yet, so people liked what they saw, but they wanted a recipe. So it was consistently putting recipes out there in the caption at the time. That's, I think, what helped me to grow my following in the beginning. And it's the passion, because it's, with a lot of the recipes, I have a story. Like the story of spaghetti and crabs that I was telling you earlier, or maybe there's a story about the lobster trauma that I had in you know, when I was in cooking school, or picking dandelion on the side of the road when we were younger. So people, Italian Americans who are, you know, a lot of, and obviously I have a big following, so they're not all Italian Americans, a lot of people in other countries as well, but there are a lot of people with Italian roots. They're very nostalgic people. They, not to say other cultures aren't, but I just know for sure that Italian Americans are very nostalgic. So they love remembering the past. They love the moments with Nonna. They love, oh my gosh, my mom made the sauce the same way that you did. Or, oh my gosh, we were picking dandelions on the side of the road too when we were younger. How embarrassing. Or, yeah, we ate spaghetti and crabs on July 4th. So I have a lot of those stories. Not having grown up, like I actually do wish I grew up in an Italian neighborhood like Brooklyn or, you know, South Philly. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in South Jersey, you know, in Cherry Hill, which is not Italian at all. But we, you know, so everyone's upbringing's a little different, but I still have a lot of those shared experiences, and I think it's the shared experiences that is what drove people to my brand. That, and based on the feedback, I'm very deep. I put a lot of detail in my recipe posts. It comes from the professional chef in me. It's like I want to think about almost, and actually the auditor. As an auditor, pre-food business, my job was to think about what could go wrong. Like literally as auditors, we had to go into a business and say, what could go wrong, and is the business taking care of this? Well, I think also to this day, what could go wrong when people are making this recipe? What questions are going to come up? What are they going to have to know while they're doing this? So I put a lot of information in my post. Now, some might say it's too much. Google might say it's too much, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Thank you for writing X, Y, and Z. It really helped to know all the background. So I'm writing for a specific kind of person, right? I'm not writing for the moms who want to put something on the table in 5 minutes. That's not my brand. My brand is about making the dishes the right way, you know, and also making sure that you're able to put your own spin on them, which I always encourage people to do. And here's the foundation, here's the technique.
I love that. That's so brilliant to think that. Like, what can go, because something always goes wrong, literally.
Things, especially, yeah, there's a lot of things that could go wrong.
And the way that your Nonna wrote the recipe is always like, oh, take the glass from the cupboard and pour the water in.
Did Nonna actually write a recipe?
Or they don't have the recipe written. Some of them do have like jumbo eggs and you know this much butter, and you make exactly as the recipe says, and it doesn't work out that way.
Right.
And then you're like, why isn't this coming out right?
Well, because Nonna wasn't a recipe developer. She was a wonderful home cook. She didn't have to measure everything every time.
Right. Exactly.
She wasn't putting a website together.
Exactly.
And you do have to be pretty detailed with a website. I've learned so much, and I'm still learning a ton. Like for me, the easy part is the recipe development, is the coming up with great recipes, and it's documenting it all. And I've gotten better at the photographs, but there's also a ton of writing. And I like to write, but it's a huge part of the job, which I did not anticipate.
It's something I've always thought of. It's very common for people to want to recreate a recipe they grew up having, and it's they have it written, they don't have it written, they don't know how to make it, they're intimidated, or it's just not turning out. What would you say to those people, or do you even help people recreate recipes? It's something I thought of helping people do.
I mean, I certainly would. I get a lot of random questions from people, and I answer everything. So I sometimes get questions about what should I do if, or why do I do this, or why does this is a recipe. But I guess if they didn't know where to start, I would say to look through maybe websites or cookbooks and find something close to it and start there as a base. And then make it slowly and be open to like adding a little this, little that, or taking something out. But if you really don't know where to start with a similar recipe and then massage it.
Like find a similar recipe online.
Yeah, find a similar recipe online or in a cookbook.
Okay.
And start there.
Okay.
Gotta start somewhere. I mean, if you really don't know, obviously talk to people in the family if they're still around.
Right.
But it's it could be intimidating if you don't know how to cook. I mean, that's not, I mean, that I can do, so that I would love to help people with. But yeah, it can be very intimidating for people.
Yes. And how do you think building your brand, talking about our Italian roots and people that are nostalgic, maybe they have a recipe they want to recreate from their roots and it brings them back to their roots. Italians are very nostalgic, but I think everyone is proud of where they come from, hopefully their culture, their tradition. How do you think creating your brand has reconnected you with your heritage? I mean, did you mean to do that, or?
So when I started Mangia with Michele, first of all, it was on Instagram, and it was the iteration before that was an Instagram account that I started when I came back from Italy. I went to Abruzzo in 2015, and I was working. This is before I started my consulting, so I was working at a small food and juice company, and that was not feeding my Italian American soul at all. I mean, I loved the job; it was a fun job, but I still always had this very personal connection to Italy and everything Italian.
What were you doing for them?
Oh, I was the director of culinary development, and it was a vegan organic food and juice company.
Oh.
So I was developing all sorts of things from different juices to a lot of very healthy vegan things like avocado mousse, chocolate mousse made with avocado, I should say, different wraps and other stuff, very, very healthy, leaning food. I went to Italy on vacation, and I learned this expression when I was in Abruzzo, which is, in Abruzzi si mangia bene, actually in Abruzzo si mangia bene. My grandparents were immigrants from Abruzzi when Abruzzo and Molise were together, and then at some point the two regions split. So when grandmom came over, it was Abruzzi. So I changed that term that I learned in Italy to in Abruzzi si mangia bene, which just means in Abruzzi you eat well. I just thought it was a nice, beautiful saying. I started an Instagram account called in Abruzzi si mangia bene. That's a long word, it's all Italian, nobody knows what it is, but it was just for fun. I was just putting memes, I was putting what I was eating, I was putting travel photos. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I was consulting, and I realized maybe I can eventually work with some great Italian food brands that I love as some supplemental income to my consulting practice. So I changed the name of my Instagram account to Mangia with Michele, which actually a friend came up with that name. And I thought, let me grow a following. My only objective was growing a following to perhaps one day work with brands so that I could have some supplemental income. Well, my intention was to put my recipes out there, and that's how I was starting to grow my brand and stories. It very quickly took on a life of its own, which I was not prepared for. It did a few different things. It connected me with other people that were doing what I was doing, especially in the local New York metropolitan area. I was living in Manhattan at the time. So other food influencers, if you want to call them, or like food people or food people who cook a lot. So I started to meet people that way. I also started to get connected with people in the Italian American community. And even though I'm a proud Italian American, I wasn't really involved. I wasn't in any organizations. I wasn't really connected in my life with a lot of Italian Americans outside my family and cousins and stuff. And that was great. But more importantly, I started to connect with the people out there that were making my recipes. which is just something I wasn't really, like, I knew I was putting recipes out there, but I didn't really expect to get people to email me and tell me, oh, I need something, you know? So when that started to happen, I'm like, oh my goodness. And all this happened just kind of very quickly and organically. It just started growing and growing. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, maybe I could like put more emphasis on this. And like little by, and I'm still doing food service consulting at this point. And little by little, my passion started to shift again. Like very similar to when I was in public accounting and I was like losing interest in public accounting and wanting to do something in the food world. Well, now I'm in the food service world and I'm losing interest in food service and I'm gaining interest in, I don't know what, you know, in creating content for actual cooks out there. And I wish that I had learned this about myself while I was still in a company where I had a regular paycheck, I gotta be honest, because I realized this when I still had to rally for clients because I'm a consultant. So it was sort of a rough couple years there for me, I gotta be honest, where I was in, you know, I was consulting, it was my own business, but I wasn't that into it anymore, but I still didn't really have a direct, clear path as to, but what am I actually gonna do? Like, how am I gonna grow Mangia with Michele? And I think once lockdown in 2020 hit and I wrote the cookbook, then the path was a little bit more clear, like, okay, I'm gonna start my website, mangiawithmichele.com. I'm gonna do a food blog. I'm gonna learn everything I can about that, and I'm still learning. And really, the food blog didn't even take off for a couple years after that because in the middle, life happened. I had surgery. I moved out of Manhattan back to South Jersey, and it was only once I was settled here in the suburbs again that I dedicated myself to working full time on my website. That's what I'm doing now.
Wow. It's funny because I, like you, was not very involved in Italian American clubs either. You know, I grew up Italian, we had family and friends, we always lived near each other. But it was like, okay, I went to college, moved to New York, had my friends, moved to California. My grandparents cried when I moved to California. They're like, why are you going? Why are you moving away from the Italian family?
Right.
And it's only when I published my cookbook, which is called Cooking with Italian Roots, again, same. People were, oh, I made your recipe, I read your stories. It brought me back to that memory of when the cookbook was just my passion project during COVID as a tribute to my grandmother who inspired me to cook and host at my own home for my friends. And then when I did the cookbook and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm loving connecting with people. And it has truly now come full circle where it inspired me when I lost my corporate job to go to the town of my ancestry in Italy to study the food culture. And I'm truly now living in, you know, I've gone back, this will be the third year I go back there, you know, going to the festivals, the culinary festivals.
That's
you know,
amazing.
I'm hosting a retreat, I'm bringing someone to travel there that's never been, that's not even Italian, to experience that culture, to live like a local. Because for me, it was so transformational for me. And it's really connected me with my roots. What do you think people can find by maybe reconnecting with their own roots? And how do you think they can go about doing that?
Yeah, and I would actually like to do that. I haven't really gone down that road too much. You know, I think there's people that have an interest in it, and then there's people that just don't have any interest whatsoever. If you have an interest in it, it can just give you more perspective on your own, I guess, upbringing in life and maybe why you are. And it could just be bring you joy. There's that word joy again, going back and seeing like the places that, you know, you came from. I think it's a great idea. Like I said, I would like to do it. I haven't been to the towns where my Sicilian grandparents came from when I was 11. When I was 11, I actually was in Abruzzo with my grandmother and dad. But that was so long ago and nobody's really around anymore. So it's hard, I guess, when you don't have any family there. But I think you can still do it. I mean, even if it's a matter of like, you're not sure about going there for a whole week, go to Rome and then do a day trip if you can, or, you know, a side trip. Or
it was funny, and I don't know if she listens to this podcast. There is this lady that found me on YouTube. She must have done a Google search of our town. Her grandfather is from the same town my grandfather is from. My last name is only from this town. So she Googles me, she finds me on YouTube, she cold emails me and says, hey, I'm actually planning a trip. I'm going by myself. I don't speak much Italian. In March, you know, what do you think? I'm looking for this last name. I said, actually, let me ask my cousin. So I gave her,
who is in Italy.
who lives there.
Okay.
And I gave her her number. I said, call her. She offered to help you walk around the town.
Awesome.
And she wrote me. I said, oh, I'm never probably going to hear what happened. She wrote me while she was there, and she said, I met your cousin. She brought me around. I met your other cousin. I love Castel Marone.
Wow.
I love it so much. And she sent me a picture of her hiking and just the landscape. And she went in the spring, and she just said, I got the most delicious cookies. And she just said, everyone is so accommodating and warm and welcoming. And this is such a gem.
And her family was from there as well? Nice.
From there. And she had never gone. And I don't think she found anyone related to her still. But it's so grounding to go back to that area. So you definitely should go.
Yeah.
You definitely should
and
go back.
A lot of those towns that people go back to are small towns.
Right.
So they're definitely off the beaten path. So there's something just very special about that.
Exactly. It's this grounding feeling of like, wow, I'm really from here.
Right.
This is where I'm from, even if you don't meet anyone.
I think there's the little hesitance also if you don't speak the language, because even though people speak English in a lot of parts of Italy, not necessarily in small towns.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of hesitancy there.
Yes, for me, for sure. I can't go to the store by myself.
And then there's the driving. I mean, I have driven in Italy, but I'd rather have a driver. But you generally have to drive to those.
I drive
out of way towns.
And they give you the Americana gets the the automatic car that's huge, like the only Jeep, and everybody knows you're a foreigner and a tourist.
Oh my gosh! And when I drove in Italy, I was driving so slow because the roads were curvy and the cars were just lining up behind me, and I'm just like, just go around me.
Just go around.
Just go around me. Oh my goodness.
So what is your recipe for joy for us? After all this cooking journey, and you found your own joy through building your brand and connecting with people over your recipes and reconnecting with your roots.
It's a great question. And there's so many things, I guess, that go into joy. One is like pause, I guess. Pause and enjoy the moment, which is, what's that expression that the Italian, the joy of doing nothing? But you know what I'm like, because life.
From Eat, Pray, Love. She
I
says
don't
it.
know. I mean, yeah, she probably says it. La dolce far niente. So pause so that you can enjoy. Don't scarf down your food, right? Like enjoy because we're talking about food. So I mean, food is very much connected with joy for me. Pause, share, and enjoy. I mean, try to take the time and the effort and make the effort, I guess, to do the things you always wanted to do. I am proud of the fact that I followed my passion in life. I made that change from public accounting at a very young age. I mean, I was 27, and my life would have been completely different if I didn't make that change, and I'm also proud of the fact that I've made another change now. I mean, working for myself on my website is something I never ever imagined that I would be doing. But I feel like everything I've done in my life has kind of brought me to this point and put me in this position where I'm able to like share with others my love and joy for food, and that to the right people. So I think, for me, joy is sharing and pausing and enjoying as much as possible.
Yeah,
it's a journey, right? I mean, it's not perfect, but I think those are important.
I think we're all
elements, important ingredients.
Important
recipe for joy.
Important ingredients. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. And
it's my pleasure.
And we're gonna Mangia in a second on our lobster sauce. Tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, connect with you.
Sure, definitely. My website is the best place, which is mangiawithmichele.com. That's MANGIA with Michele with one L. And that's the best place, but I'm also on all social, I think all the social, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, not as much, but growing, and TikTok a little bit. Also at Mangia with Michele. My cookbook is on Amazon. It's called Soupified, Soups Inspired by Your Favorite Dishes. There's also links to it all over my website. So you follow me in any one spot, you can pretty much find everything else.
And I'll link everything.
But yeah, and sign up for my mailing list. I send out new recipes generally once or twice a week. I won't bombard you, I promise, with a lot of mail. And
Instagram, you're always posting recipes.
I'm posting I'm posting probably every day on Instagram, more or less.
I always think like, gosh, she has so much stamina to do this. How does she do this? It's incredible. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
So thank you
Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast and for coming down to South Jersey.
Loved it. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to eat now.